Hello, Tide fans, and welcome to Tide Talk. I've got a great friend of mine here with me today, Craig Howard. We were just sitting here talking prior to the show, and man, there's a lot of exciting things to discuss. We're going to just jump right in it. Craig, first of all, if I'm not mistaken, the last time you and I watched Alabama game together, 2010 National Championship game out in Pasadena.
Yep. Yeah, what an incredible night. I tell you, I saw something the other night. It was two people conversing on social media, and they said if they would have told you that here in Pasadena that this was about to go down.
That's right. Yeah.
Would you have believed them that night?
There ain't no way.
No way.
Well, I mean, and we talked about that on the first couple of shows. I had Roy Dixon, which, was out there with us, and we talked about what a great experience that was. But if you would have told me earlier in that season, if you would have told me that was going to happen the way it happened, I mean, again, with everything that took place, with the way we started out on the trip, and then, of course, Feinbaum getting involved.
Right.
And then we're across the country, and we run in to you, who's from Phoenix City, and I've known all my life, basically. Yeah. So, man, what a great experience. Great game to watch for Tide fans.
Absolutely.
A national championship. So a great time, and now here we are again 8 years later, and we're going to talk about a great subject. Of course, you and I both love Alabama football. So give me just your kind of high-level view of what you have seen thus far, just team as a whole, if you will, just kind of your thoughts on what you've seen so far.
When is Alabama going to be challenged? When is Alabama going to be challenged? And I don't want to be that fan because I'm not. But so far, I mean, they haven't played any very good opponents so far. Even their SEC matchup, I mean,
the expectation, it was a lot more build-up than what.
In reality, though, I mean, if you look at what's happened to Ole Miss, they're trending down, not up.
Right.
So that was not any kind of a surprise at all. And so it's when are they going to be tested? And that's kind of been the trend the last couple of years. This week, again, build up.
What are we, a 24-point favorite, if I'm not mistaken?
Over 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, again. So, I mean, at what point is Alabama going to be challenged? I think that this is the kind of team this week, Texas A&M, that can challenge Alabama and at least push them into the second half.
Right. My guest on the show last week was Maurice Booth, a really good friend of mine, actually played at Alabama, and he made the comment. He said they're going to be at the Grove by halftime.
Right.
I mean, he pretty much called that. I mean, 42-7 at the half, and we're already taking out some of our ones.
Right.
I mean, that was pretty impressive, and you're right. Although I think Ole Miss is a good football team, I'm still waiting to see, are we that good, or have we just not played that opponent yet?
Right.
I mean, that was a road win that's generally caused us some issues over the past few years.
Right.
I mean, we've had some issues. So I agree, Craig. Right. Are we that good, or are we just playing teams that aren't there yet?
Well, and kind of along that question, there's a little bit out news-wise today, being Tuesday early in the week, talking about who is the best team in the SEC right now.
Right.
And right now, there are some things out there that say LSU is the best team.
A lot of talk about LSU.
They have 2 top 10 wins.
Right.
To me, if I were a voter in the AP, and if they do it the way they've been charged to do it, and you've seen them kind of go back and forth on how they do it. Used to, if you were number one, you were number one, and you had to lose to fall and that type of thing. But if you really and truly sat back and analyzed where we were in 3 weeks, like the committee's going to do in a couple of weeks, who would be number one today in the SEC? To me, it'd be LSU. I don't think Alabama's been able to prove anything yet. Do they look phenomenal? Yeah, but Louisville, traditionally, not good defense. Ole Miss showed they didn't have a good, strong defense, although it's ironic that they call themselves the Land Sharks now,
that's right.
which is built off of an incredible defense, and now they're a terrible defense. But they played 3 really lackluster traditional defenses.
Well, it goes it goes back to that preseason ranking thing. So to your point, if you looked at it and the body of work to date,
right,
you got to consider LSU.
You got to.
You got to consider LSU. It's that whole preseason ranking thing that, and Saban says the same thing. Rankings don't mean anything.
Right.
They don't mean anything, and I totally agree. Here's the difference, a different spin that I'll put on that. If we were ranked number 1 and we were barely getting by, then you've got to consider LSU to be
right.
in. But we're not barely getting by. I mean, the stat that was really shocked me the other night was we're the first team in SEC history to start
right.
the season with 3 50-point games.
Right.
And that didn't really sink in until I thought about that. In SEC history, that's pretty impressive when you're talking about the teams Florida, Steve Spurrier had back then, and when Bo Jackson was at Auburn, and
that's right.
and Herschel Walker was at Georgia, and so that's pretty impressive.
No, it's and what they're doing, and not just winning big, but they're getting ahead early and scoring consistently and not turning the ball over. They're scoring on every drive that they have with their ones. And even in the last couple of years, we haven't seen that.
That's right.
Out of all of Alabama's teams.
Yeah.
So
it's expected. We just didn't see it.
That's right. I mean, they might win 56-0, but it might be 21-0 at the halftime against Vanderbilt, and
right.
and you're thinking we should be further ahead than this. And then because of maybe penalties, turnovers, just not having a good focus. Now you're playing starters into the second half, and you're risking yourself for injury and that type of thing. So to say they've gone out and been able to dominate, get a lot of their players out before the first half, that shows that they're meeting the expectation of number 1.
And talk about focus. I mean, you heard Saban talk on his press conference. Quote unquote, he was pissed. Mm-hmm. We won 62-7, but he was pissed. And he was pissed because of the little things that he said when you play a good team will cost you. And it's what I've always wondered. I mean, how do you, we've just beaten, 3 teams senseless and scored 50-plus and 60 points. How do you keep those guys focused, and how do you keep them humbled and hungry? And one of the ways that he's going to do it is you've got to focus to where we don't get those little penalties, those mental, what he calls those mental errors that you can't have against better teams.
That's right. And it's also something that you've seen every year, but it has been on display bigger than ever this year, is you're never guaranteed the next start.
Right.
And if you can go to the quarterback position, and I know it's all been hashed out, but if you go to the quarterback position and you're sitting here with your former number 1 for the last 2 years as your backup, didn't get hurt, won 26-2. I mean,
with a national championship.
With a national championship and a runner-up, and he's not good enough to be the starter, that sends a message to anybody. I mean, if the quarterback can be replaced like that, then there's not a position that's protected on the team.
Well, it's that whole, competition's good. Mm-hmm. Competition within a position on a team, what have you, on the side of the ball is good. It demands the best that you have, and I think we're beginning to see some of that. You talk about years past, we would be 21-0 at halftime and not really, we might end up winning big. Our guys, I don't know that Tua's really played into the fourth quarter.
I don't think he has.
I don't
think he's taking a snap in the fourth quarter.
And that's it's a double-edged sword in my opinion. We'll talk about that a little bit later because we're going to talk about numbers and what I think that that he needs. But to say that it's a double-edged sword, because it's great because other guys get reps and you're getting some younger guys some playing time, like this past week at an SEC school, away, great environment, stuff that they need. But then on the flip side, you got your number one quarterback who hadn't taken a snap in the fourth quarter yet.
Right.
As you said, when we play that difficult or more challenging team, and he's having to play in the fourth quarter, what's it going to be like?
Right.
I
agree.
So a lot of positive things, a lot of excitement. Obviously, I don't know that we've seen this type of offensive production from an Alabama team. Consistently. We've seen it sporadically.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, I think we were playing a Tennessee team at home and we scored 60-something points, and I was thinking, what in the world?
Right.
Now it's almost expected.
Right.
It's almost expected for us. Loxley said it earlier. He didn't want to be just known as a defensive team. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that too, because, boy, I think the defense has actually surprised a lot of people. Right. When we expected them to not be so good because of the people that we lost, and now look at the way we're playing.
Right. Now, my expectation, I predicted actually 65 to 20, and I said that Ole Miss would score 3 or 4 times, and that might be a combination of touchdowns and field goals.
And after that first play, you were thinking you might.
And I was like, it might be worse. But then it turned out, after that first play, they were locked down. I mean, you take 80 yards out of that stat sheet, and
they did.
It was already unbelievable stat sheet, but then you take 80 yards out of it,
nothing,
and it's Ole Miss had very little.
And I'm going to make a comment about that. You take the first play of the game, and it goes for 75, 80 yards for a touchdown. I don't know if you remember, but the very next offensive play for them was the long pass that looked like it was
almost
about to be a touchdown.
It did.
But Trayvon Diggs, man, what a great play. It changes the dynamic of the game.
Right.
If they make that catch and it's a touchdown, now you're in a fight. Now they think they have a little bit of hope.
That's right. They at least make it a halftime.
Exactly. I was reading an article, and the coach was asked about Matt Luke, Ole Miss's head coach, was asked about Alabama, and I laughed for a second, but then I started thinking back to that play. For the first few plays, they felt like they had a chance.
Right.
Now, I'm not so sure that after that they had that feeling. But if they make that play, they're in the ball game and up. And of course, we score really quickly and take that, I think, 3 plays, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
And it looked really easy. But if they make that play, they're in the ball game. So I say that to say, after those couple of plays, it was locked down, lights out.
Right.
And it was nothing but Alabama.
That's right.
Well, we're going to take a break here in just a second, and I want to say a special thank you to our season sponsor, Bob English with State Farm. We're also going to try something a little new, Craig, so you get to be a guinea pig for this. But we're going to you'll see a number on the bottom of the screen, and we're going to take calls from our fans, from our viewers, and what we're going to do, there's a voicemail set up, and you'll call into this number, and if you've got questions about a game, or if you just want to add a comment about the show, we're going to take those and air those on the next show. So we're trying something different. Again, we want to get some interaction with you, our viewers. So if you'll see this number on the bottom of the screen, call in, give us a shout. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you got to say. I want to know what questions that you might have. And my guest next week and I will take a look at that, and we'll answer that. So hold your seats. We'll be right back with Tide Talk.
State Farm agent Bob English is here to help protect all the moving parts of your life. With auto, home, life, and financial services, Bob English and his team make it simple to bring together what matters to you. Get to a better state. Call Bob today.
All right, welcome back, Tide fans. So we ended the last segment just talking about, kind of how we finished that game with Ole Miss, but I want to ask you this question. We mentioned prior to the Ole Miss game, Craig, someone had thrown out there, is Saban really worth the money? Is he the best coach? We kind of kicked that around, of course, I have an opinion. Everybody has an opinion. But now, three games in with a brand new offensive coordinator, a brand new defensive coordinator, both stellar offense and defense, the guy seems to be pretty legit.
The one thing about it, and I've been in the media before, not certainly at any great level or anything like that, but I understand how it works. And if there's one thing that you want to do, whether you want to get more people to share your tweet or your Facebook post or anything else, is mention something negative about Alabama to the Alabama nation, because they're going to rip you. And you might just get a joy out of that, and so you just do it. But this one, the last week was a student newspaper for Ole Miss. I mean, questioning whether Nick Saban was that good of a coach. I mean, that's what it was. And it wasn't a headline grabbing, come to the end and go, well, maybe he is. It was, no, he was not. And I go back to what you just said. He's got a first-year coordinator on offense and defense, and they're two of the best performing units in the country.
Right. I mean, numbers speak for themselves.
Right.
Numbers speak for themselves. I mentioned the fact that, and I don't know the exact statistic. Maybe you do and can correct me, but this is his 12th season. Mm-hmm. I want to say 10 of the 12, we've started out as the number one team in the country. I think there's a statistic that says we've held the number one spot for like X number of weeks, longer than anybody.
We just beat for all time, just beat out Oklahoma 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Tied 2 weeks ago, this week won,
right.
And the new one.
Man, that is a statistic that you just can't deny.
Yeah.
It's like my high school coach used to always tell me, the eye in the sky don't lie. Well, the statistics speak, the numbers speak for themselves.
The numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie. That's going to lead right into this. We were talking earlier, is Tua the real deal? Is he that good? I mean, and you've got a spin on that. I mean, has he been challenged?
Right. I mean, who has been able to prepare for him? I go back to, and I certainly don't want to try to make a comparison between Tua and Cam Newton. That wouldn't be fair.
Right.
But
two different players.
But you kind of kept waiting. Well, once they figured out what they had in Cam Newton, because it took them 4 games to figure out what they had.
Right.
But once they figured it out, you kind of look and go, well, once people see what they're doing with this read option, they're going to shut this down.
Stop that.
And no, you couldn't. And you couldn't do it. So the same thing, with Tua, and matter of fact, going again back to social media, but it was Luke Del Rio, former Florida quarterback. He has his own podcast, and he was talking about he couldn't wait to see Tua face adversity. And people will say, well, the Georgia game was adversity, but like you said, it wasn't.
Had nothing to lose.
When you're playing with nothing to lose, you're playing with house money, you do what you want to do.
I mean, there's a difference of coming into a big game. Certainly that was a big game, the national championship game last year. But he had nothing to lose. It's not like he came in and the game was tied.
That's right.
And he came in and we had not moved the football. We didn't have a point on the board.
That's right.
And so as you like you said, that isn't necessarily adversity. The overtime series, he'd been playing the whole second half. Loses 16 yards on the first play.
That's right.
Maybe a little adversity right there.
It certainly was.
Maybe a little adversity. But I think what Luke Del Rio is saying is, to start a game, to start out you're now the starting quarterback. You're the starting quarterback for the University of Alabama, which the expectation is always high. And the expectation is not just to win, but to win national championships.
Take your team into undefeated Death Valley at night. 8 games into the year, where they've got film on you and they've seen what you do. They've seen what this new offensive coordinator has done.
On the other side of the ball.
They have athletes on the other side of the ball, and they're undefeated, and we're talking about a top 5 matchup.
It's funny that you mention that. I have to mention my my son's best friend is a big LSU fan, and he's from Louisiana. His name is Blaze, so I'm giving him a shout out right now. But he says there's nothing, Mr. Sean, there's nothing like Death Valley at night, especially against Alabama. And my son has actually had an opportunity to go, and so that's exactly right. You're now the starting quarterback for the number one team in the country, and you're probably 8-0, and you're going to Death Valley at night, maybe one of the loudest places to play in the country, and they very well may be undefeated, if not maybe just one loss at that time. And now let's see how you handle it.
Right. And then if you pull that off, you get Mississippi State at home, so you don't have to deal with the Cowbells, and you get Auburn at home. But you still, those are two, again, your three best defenses that you're playing with the Kevin Steele preparing for you, with Ed Orgeron and his unit preparing for you. He hasn't seen that. I know, and again, Kirby Smart, phenomenal head coach, great defense and everything else. And people mentioned, well, Kirby Smart said he was prepared for him. Yeah, but what film did he watch?
Right.
What offense did he see? Because it was a completely different offense with Jalen Hurts in versus Tua. All right, and you see also the same thing now. I mean, you go back to that. We talk about one of the things you said in the last segment that kind of made me think is Tua getting enough time. Is he getting enough time with that unit to gel? But then at the same time, when Jalen comes in, it's a whole different unit that's getting the ball. All of a sudden, the running backs are getting the ball more. Right. You're not seeing Judy as much.
Blocking schemes are different for the offensive line.
Exactly. Everything
changes a little bit.
And you're talking about, you see 5 guys getting the ball with Tua, and then 5 new guys getting it with Jalen. Go back and look at the film. It's like, where's our running game? And then all of a sudden, bam, 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 we're down the field with 80 yards rushing.
Well, and that, talk about the change from last year to this year and the number of people that touched the ball last year versus already in 3 games, the number of receivers that
first string too, not just because we
passes. That's right. I'm talking about guys that are starters. They're legitimate catches. It's phenomenal the way the ball is being spread out. No longer can teams focus on Calvin Ridley or Amari Cooper. That heck, I know a little bit about football, and I knew that we were throwing it to Calvin Ridley.
That's right.
You don't think that those guys knew that? And so now they've got a lot more to prepare for. And I go back to what I wanted to mention. Jimbo Fisher, in my opinion, is going to be a little bit more prepared. One reason is because he's a former Nick Saban assistant coach. Right. Kirby Smart, Kevin Steele. I don't think that Tennessee's very good, but you got Pruitt down there.
That's right.
Who's going to and it's what I've said, and it, everybody knows it. Every week, everybody is coming with their best because you're the number one team in the country, and so you got a bullseye on your chest.
That's right.
It's going to be interesting to see how Tua progresses. Mm-hmm. Man, he's already up here. We're 3 games in, and everybody's. I looked at a stat. The guy's 13 for 13 on third downs with 298 yards and 6 touchdown passes.
Right.
I mean, just so you know, Alabama fans, that's going to stop at some point.
Exactly.
He's just not going to be perfect. Right now, he's perfect. It's just not going to be the case every time.
Exactly.
And I even want to give a shout out to Loxley and Enos because they're obviously calling some really good plays on third down because we've had some open receivers. Now, he's thrown some great balls, but it's not just Tua.
That's right.
So that's going to be interesting to see, when he doesn't complete a third down pass. We don't get a third down conversion, and we do have to punt, which we hadn't seen a whole lot.
Right.
So there's a lot of questions that are still out there that I'm looking forward to seeing. We're going to talk about that in just a second when we come back from this break. But we're going to take another break, courtesy of Bob English and State Farm. And hold your seats, Tide fans. We'll be right back with Tide Talk.
Savings this big come with their own theme music. State Farm agent Bob English in Phoenix City can help you get all the discounts you deserve with a free discount double check. After all, real savings should fold, not jingle. Get to a better state. Call Bob today.
All right, welcome back to Tide Talk. As we were wrapping up the last segment, we started talking a little bit about the guys that have coached under Saban. Does it give them an advantage? Maybe so. In some cases, possibly. But we're facing a team this weekend, Texas A&M. So Jimbo Fisher, former assistant, in his first year at Texas A&M. So what's your take, Craig, on what Jimbo Fisher's accomplished to this point? Number one, being new. They of course have some fresh faces on their team, quarterback. What's your take on what we're going to be getting into?
I think first of all, Jimbo was ahead of the curve by getting out of Tallahassee before it burned down to the ground.
Without a doubt,
because it's on the way. But no, he's brought a new energy, and they've had the players. They've had good recruiting classes every year. They haven't had a lot of attrition in those classes. Kevin Sumlin did not leave the cupboard bare.
That's right.
And
I have to agree with that.
On any given day, they could beat anybody in the conference. And there were years where they were able to beat Alabama and they were able to beat Auburn and they were able to beat the top teams. So the talent is there to be able to win at any given time. Combine that with Fisher. Him bringing new energy. They certainly played inspired against Clemson. You
had a chance, and maybe
right,
argumentatively, should have won that game.
And you look at them. Once they figured out what they needed to do to stop Clemson, they did. Matter of fact, when the ball went out of bounds with 2 minutes ago, I said I would have gotten thrown out of the game. The fact that he got his wits back together and was able to realize that we can get a stop and have another chance.
Yeah.
Is a testament to his willpower, because I don't think I could have held myself in.
No disrespect to Sumlin, I want to comment on what you said. They've always been talented. Mm-hmm. They're right there in the thick of Texas recruiting, especially with the way the Longhorns have kind of struggled over the past several years, maybe since we beat them in 2010.
That's right.
So they're in the recruiting limelight. They've always had talent. They've been able to win some big games, but then they would turn around and lose the game that they're supposed to win.
Right.
And I'm wondering if that's going to be a Jimbo Fisher effect, if he's going to change that mentality.
Right.
That consistency every single week.
Right. Well, and I mean, if you take Clemson to the wire and then you turn around and beat Alabama, you're playing with the same formula that Auburn played with last year, except you're getting your bump early in the season and not late in the season. It's not a rebuild to me, and I don't think he would have jumped ship anywhere to just go and rebuild a
go
program.
5-5.
No, and so I think that he knew what he was doing. He knew where he wanted to be, and I think he pursued it, and they pursued him, and so he's going to have some tricks up his sleeve. We're talking about now 3 games into the season. There's enough film out there that he can break it down. I know he hadn't seen everything Alabama has, but like we go back to 2 brand new coordinators, you got to figure out what they're doing. You got a quarterback that you've never seen. Everything that you can look at, you have to figure out it's brand new. So at least he's got a little bit to work with. So I think he'll be ready.
And I say this all the time. Nick Saban's much smarter than what a lot of people give him credit for. You talk about a lot of film for Alabama being out there. There's only really a half for the ones.
Right.
In each game,
maybe
there's
half
only
of a half for Tua.
Yeah.
Because Hurts is in the game.
Right. So, I mean, is there really enough film to really break down what Alabama's offense can do, or defense for that matter too. So
Right.
that's a good point. And I'll tell you this: I know Jimbo Fisher teams in the past, they will be prepared. Listen, their quarterback is an athlete. He is a baseball player that's playing quarterback, powerful arm, got a really big receiver to throw to, almost like a Mike Evans from years ago when Manziel was with him.
Had a big target.
6'5", 200+ pounds, big target. So they're going to present some challenges. I'm interested to see again how Nick Saban and his coaching staff gets our guys ready. They hear that they're a 24-point favorite. Know that they hear that. I know that they talk about, they don't pay attention to it, and maybe we're disciplined enough that's the case. I know how I am. I know how I was as an athlete, and that affects them. So I'm interested to see how Nick Saban and the coaching staff prepares us for this game at home and to be a 24-point favorite.
I think this is the last big challenge for a while. And you're not so far in, you're not finding this game 6 or 7 games in where you're tired and worn out. They're very well rested because they haven't had to play 4 quarters yet.
Fortunately.
So I think that I don't think that the point spread will be an issue. I think that they've got a lot to play for, and this is, you also know as an athlete, this is the one, if I can just put it all in this week, next week we have Louisiana Lafayette the next week. So there's you've got that, when you're going to get that mental break. So you can't break down right now.
Yeah, and I think that our defense has been on the field much more than I think our offensive team has. I do see that we're substituting. But our defense being in question early on, man, I think they've really showed up. But I want to see them actually put 4 quarters together where I'm not saying I want to see a close game, man. I'd love to blow Texas A&M off the field.
Right.
What I mean is I want to see them put 4 quarters together so that, number one, just that they can mesh more. I mean, we spoke about it earlier in the year. Deontay Thompson is the play caller for the DBs, and Mac Wilson's the play caller for the defense, the front 7. And this is their first year doing that.
Right.
They've only really had 3 games, to mesh and to do that. And then part of that, they're not out there because other guys are getting playing time. So I want to see more of that. And we're looking pretty good right now, but I think there's room to grow. Nick Saban talked about it earlier. There's always room for improvement. Anytime you see a guy running wide open, something happened because we don't have a defensive play where somebody's wide open.
That's right.
So I'm looking forward to seeing our guys play a little bit more together and mesh and gel a little bit more.
Right.
I don't know. I can't remember the stat. It was a stat with respect to the defense and interceptions. I guess it was 2 or 3 years, maybe 3 years ago. I'm sorry, where the defense is scoring 16 times, and we're starting out that way this year. 3 pick sixes, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's 3, yeah.
And you're talking about some young guys, Craig, that are filling those spots. Deontay Thompson's a sophomore safety signal caller.
Right.
Xavier McKinney, you're talking about young guys that are making these plays. They got talent, but now they got to take this complex defensive scheme and be able to take their talent and apply that.
Right. And that's just there's a difference between a 5-star that fills a need and a 5-star just to be a 5-star. And it seems like that
really good
when
point.
you look at
really
what Nick Saban does very well is his recruiting. Nobody can question that. But he doesn't just bring 5-stars in that you can say we've signed 5-5-stars. And then they fall by the wayside. You see them, they come in, they fill holes, and they fill needs, and then they're able to build upon that and become starters, and then they're able to become leaders.
Yeah.
And they're able to do that within 3 years.
Yeah.
Because then there's going to be this major turnover. I mean, even going back to redshirting and Jalen Hurts redshirting. I mean, I don't think he has. I don't think they have 5-year plans in their mindset at the University of Alabama.
Well, I mean, when's the last
outside of injury?
When's the last? I mean, if you think about that, when's the last time that we've had a player actually go 4 years? I mean, people are leaving early because they're coming to a system that they know will prepare them, especially defensively. They're coming to a system that they know will prepare them for what's ahead, the next level, the NFL. And a lot of times they're doing it in 3 years, like you said. It's why I really appreciate Damian Harris. Listen, I'm a Damian Harris fan.
Right.
I think if the guy got the ball 20 to 25 times a game, he's in the Heisman conversation.
Right.
He goes about his business so professionally. You don't ever see him complain. He speaks very well. He's an Alabama football player. And I've just appreciated the fact that he came back for his senior year, which you don't see a lot.
No.
You don't see a lot.
So.
Well, Craig, I'll tell you, it's no question going to be an exciting year. The offense, I think for years Alabama fans have kind of been waiting on this, if you will. I mean, I mentioned it before. I love winning, and I'll take the 13-10, 13-6 win. I'll take it because I do know that defense wins championships without a doubt. Right. But it certainly does make it a little bit easier when you got 50 points on.
It's a lot better than the Stallings years.
I mean, it certainly makes it easier. It makes it easier on the players. It makes it easier on the fans when you can kind of sit back a little bit. I mean, this past weekend at halftime, the game was kind of over. I mean, we were throwing cornhole and stuff like that because you knew that it was
done.
Pretty much a done deal. So it's going to be an exciting year. Thank you, Craig, for being on the show.
I appreciate you having me.
And I just want to remind you fans that we will have the voicemail so that you can call in. The number you see right here on the bottom of your screen. Call us, give us some questions that you'd like to have answered. We'll take a look at those and pick a couple to have on the next show. And it's going to be a great season. It's going to be a lot of fun. This next game with Texas A&M should be an interesting one. I'm hoping it's over early, but we'll wait and see, and look forward to seeing you again right here next week on Tide Talk.